Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Babylon 9's match preview show with myself and Mike today. Brentford at home, which has probably got more attention than it would normally, just because of obviously the stuff that's happening off the field, Mike, with the protests and the potential lack of people in the stadium that we're going to see across the board with the protests continuing, with the boycott of the Brentford game from some of the fan base. But we'll get into that in a little bit more detail towards the end of the video. We want to go through how West Ham can get 3 points in this game against Brentford, because to be honest, it's getting to a point where these types of games are going to be really, really important. And, when we're talking about Nuno and just coming into the club, first home game in charge in the Premier League, he's obviously got a draw at Everton, lost at Arsenal. So it's important that he gets his first win under his belt as West Ham manager, especially coming out of the international break against a team that you would expect West Ham to be competing with towards the bottom end of the table in Brentford. So we're going to talk the tactics as we normally do. So if you enjoy it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content. And before we get into the stats, Mike, talk to me about your feelings about West Ham right now. And, we've just come off the back of an international break. We find ourselves in 19th in the league. So not too promising on that front, but is this now a good opportunity for West Ham and Nuno to push on in the league with some winnable fixtures coming up, starting with Brentford on Monday night?
I think, in all honesty, him getting the Everton game and it being positive, the Arsenal game was terrible. Not terrible, but we didn't get a result that everyone would have wanted, which would be at least 8 point. But it wasn't a bad performance. We did all right against Arsenal, and the main frustrations we all had in the lead up to those two games have slightly dissipated in terms of the management, because they actually did what was the good thing, was to just get rid. We've surprisingly called up 4 of our youth coaches, which cynical part of me says we weren't able to go and get who Nuno really wanted and bring them in. But that's the cynical side. The other side is that they've obviously done well and they've impressed, but also if we want to get back to being what West Ham is and what West Ham was, and the idea of the academy of football, and I think the academy at this point in time is something to be incredibly proud of. If we want to see more of these young lads given a chance, and we've got some very good young players, they may not all make it in the Premier League or even at West Ham, but we have a lot of players that need strong advocates. And clearly, no fault of his own, perhaps, Noble hasn't been a strong enough advocate to get them. But if you've got coaching staff who's like, I've been around this kid for 3, 4, 5 years, kind of talking to them, bringing them up, understanding where they are and so on. And I've got a really good understanding of this player because I've been watching him through the youth ranks, until I've kind of managed him in the last year or two. I think they deserve the opportunity. I don't think you're going to get a better advocate. And it's, again, the manager's going to have someone who knows these young lads inside and out. So we'll be able to be kind of pointing to them as these ones need opportunities. So I think it's a good thing in that we've done that. I think it's smart in that respect. We and I think many people have actually complimented Brentford and how they've done their recruitment over years from kind of coaching point of view. Thomas Frank was kind of a bit of an internal kind of move. Done the same now with their manager. It's using people that know the club, know the standard, and will kind of start setting that. And I think maybe someone like Steve Potts has probably deserved a crack at being a first team coach, because he's been at West Ham literally man and boy.
Yeah.
Played so many games for the football club and then been at the club. Has had his sons come through the football club as well playing. So I think if anyone probably ever deserved the opportunity to be a coach at the first team level, it's Stevie Potts. But the 2 weeks, I think, has allowed fans to maybe settle a little. It's allowed Nuno to get in and kind of settle and kind of structure how he wants things, work with the players that knock on an international duty. And I think it's probably been a good thing. It's probably actually been very good for the board, actually, to have that 2 weeks. Because, again, some of the sting for things could have been taken out. And momentum of the off-field situation. But from a playing side, I think that the 2 weeks prior to the international break it's going to be a really good thing for Nuno. It's given him a month to really get himself in and working and building those relationships now with his brand new coaching team. So yeah, I'm in a positive space around it, and I think it's great that we've gone the route we have. Cynicism aside, I think it's a good move.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. And let's take a look at some of the stats for this season so far for both teams. So West Ham, we can see here actual points of 4, kind of with an expected points of 6.12, so below their average of what's expected. Goals scored 6 compared to 6.67, so pretty much on par there. Goals conceded 16, which is the worst in the Premier League at the moment. So defensively, we need to improve. We would expected goals conceded of 13.21. And position-wise, we find ourselves in 19th, and according to the data, we should be 18th. So not a great reading for West Ham so far this season. And when we look at Brentford's, it's not that much better, but it is slightly better. So they've obviously got 1 more point than us with 7 compared to their expected of 9.16. They've scored 9 goals compared to 9.38. So again, very similar to West Ham in terms of the goals versus expected goals output. Goals conceded 12. That is one of the worst in the division as well, with an expected goals conceded of 9.92. And Brentford find themselves in 16th position compared to the expected data, which would put them in 12th. So very, very quickly want to touch on Brentford as well, Mike. They've obviously, as you kind of touched on, gone through a little bit of a transition period. Thomas Frank now gone to Spurs. They've hired within, recruited within, and put their trust in someone that was already at the club. So what do you make of Brentford at the moment? Because, you know, we spoke about the model of how they got into the Premier League and the good players that they have brought into their team and sold, and very similar to the Brighton model in that sense, and almost overperformed expectations from a lot of fans looking in terms of staying in the Premier League and becoming one of the more stable clubs within that division. So what have you made of their start to the season so far and what they can expect from this season?
In fairness, I think it's probably better than maybe some would expect, because obviously a brand new manager who doesn't really have management experience at that the level we're at now. Thomas Frank going is a massive change for them. They've lost Wissa as well, so they've had a lot of disruption over the summer, and obviously they've to not necessarily. I think people would probably assume that they'd be in our position in the league, which I think is testament to them that they've done right. Whether how that transpires over the course of the season is a different thing. But to this point, they think that it's steady enough, because it was quite a tumultuous summer, really, when you're losing a manager and a player of Wissa's quality in your team, Brian Bueno as well.
Yeah.
That's 3 huge components of Brentford. So, yeah, I think they're doing pretty well considering, because, as I say, I think that those 3 leaving is so huge. If we had the same level of importance leaving our squad, I think we'd be in a probably worse state than them. If we had, if we was looking at the equivalent.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And let's take a look at a little bit of some of the more detailed statistics behind Brentford's season so far before we move on to West Ham. But they have the joint 8th best defensive record in the Premier League with 9 goals scored. So they are scoring goals. They have the 11th best expected defensive record in the Premier League as well, with the 5th worst defensive record in the Premier League with 12 goals conceded. So defensively, that's where their issues currently lie as well. They rank 12th for expected points. They're averaging around 1.29 goals per game, averaging 1.71 goals conceded per game, and their possession stats are very low. So they're averaging 40.8% possession in the Premier League so far. So this is going to be a game. Again, it's difficult to then talk about the tactics because of what's happening off the field, Mike, and the potential gaps in the stadium with the fans on Monday night if people decide not to go and boycott the game. For Nuno, he's got to just be, and the players, they just need to concentrate on this game because, as I mentioned at the beginning, 3 points is very, very important, even this early on in the season in these types of fixtures, and especially at home against a team like Brentford, where Nuno's yet to win a Premier League match for West Ham. So how much of an expectation is there going to be from West Ham to drive on and be the leading driver in this match? Because we spoke about, Brentford's possession. They're going to be happily be comfortable, sit in a lower block, pick their moments when they can. And that's almost opposite of what we've seen from Nuno at Forest, where very low percentage possession. So trying to then transform that into a team that has control and can dominate possession and also create chances at the same time, maybe a little bit of a struggle. So, yeah, what are your thoughts going on to this game? Is it one that concerns you from a tactical perspective?
Um, I think in some ways it's a must win in some respect. Not because if we don't win we're in trouble. I think it's more that the sooner Nuno gets a win under his belt, the better. Um, and I think not just from a fan perspective to really start, help them get behind Nuno. And I don't think there's anyone particularly against Nuno really. I think it just again it's a confidence thing for the players. They're going in the right direction. It's confidence for him that he's pushing the club in the right direction. I just think in general we need the win more than Brentford do at this point. So I hope that translates on the pitch, and the players go out with a level of intensity and a level of intent because we need to see it. It's been quite frankly for the last year and 6 months, 18 months to a year and a half or season and a half. It's just not been good enough from West Ham. We've not seen intensity enough. Bar, one of those half seasons, the only place we really saw intensity was in Europe with Moyes. It's for the last season and a half, really, in the Premier League, the intensity has been awful, by and large. So we need to see something as a fan base. We haven't seen us win at home for a while, so we desperately need it. As you say, I think tactically, I don't think the tactics are as important as they will be in later games because it ultimately has to be. We just need to go out and win. Um, Obviously, there is going to be certain ways he wants us to set up. He's likely not want us to concede set pieces because Brentford will still be good at set pieces. I know Frank has gone, but the core of the team is kind of there who worked under Frank and knew that kind of style. They're very good at defending set pieces. They've always been good at attacking set pieces. So that's something we need to bear in mind. But I think the main message is we just need to go out and get a win, and we need to start getting the fans on board. And yes, there may not be as many fans there to the boycott, but I think what's been made abundantly clear is the boycott's not against the club, but also the club in the sense of the playing side of things. It's the other side is where there's that kind of disgruntlement. So yeah, I think he needs it because again, when the next game comes, the fan base is going to be even more up for it. And I think we need something in the fan base as well to get going. And that's even Nuno's point, that a lot of talk has happened over the last year or two about performances at West Ham and now players, players, the club, we just need to start showing it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. As you said, there's a very quick turnaround after the Brentford game as well as we travel to Leeds on the Friday. So very, very quick turnaround. Two games where you'd be looking at getting some points from. Both are going to be tough games, as is any game in the Premier League. But these are ones that, as you mentioned, getting the momentum going, getting that first win under your belt as a manager, it just relieves a little bit of that pressure and the players then get a little bit more bought into the process. And it just helps settle things, as you mentioned. And yeah, get the momentum going for the season and give the fans something. I think we've won 2 home games in the Premier League in 2025, which is catastrophic. It's terrible. It's such an easy place for teams to come and play against at the moment. So I think, as you mentioned, tactics wise, there's obviously going to be things Nuno wants to tweak and approach for this game. But I think there's two big decisions before we look ahead at the lineups and how we could potentially go, Mike. There's two big decisions I think Nuno has to make. The first one being the midfield. Obviously, Souček's back from his 3-match suspension as well, so he could potentially come back into the midfield. And up front, obviously, reports that Fulkrug has picked up another injury and he's going to be out for a while, which no one could have anticipated, I'm sure. But then there's a decision of who plays striker. I think there's 3 candidates at the moment. I think number 1, obviously, being Callum Wilson. Number 2, Callum Marshall. Maybe he goes with youth. And the third option is moving Paqueta further forwards and then maybe bringing Souček into the midfield. So out of those options, Mike, what would you be leaning towards? And what do you think that Nuno is going to do against Brentford on Monday night?
Let's go with midfield first. So I think he might stick with Magassa because the idea is he will be the longer term. I think if there's going to be any change in there, it'd be Potts over Magassa. I love Souček for his professionalism. He'll put himself on the line, but I just don't see him as any kind of starter for the time being. And I know when people like to use the statistics of when he doesn't start, we don't win, and it's been the case for a long time. And it's a very, very compelling statistic, but it's also a very pathetic statistic as well, because it shows how reliant we are on certain players, or without certain players starting, there obviously isn't the right attitude to start or finish or see out the game. So we need to start developing ways of working without these players, because they're not always going to be available to us. So personally, I think Magassa's got to develop and grow. He has to start, really. So I would stick with the same midfield. There needs to be more from Magassa, obviously, than what there was in the game against Arsenal. There needs to be much more from Fernandes, who has done well enough, but not, I don't think, too much. I don't think he's been very steady, but
It's been
nothing really. Yeah, he's just not pulling up trees or doing too much. And obviously, Paqueta is going to play, and hopefully, the confidence of the lovely assist that he made for Brazil will kind of flow in. What I think is going to be interesting is then how we go for the front three, because I think there's also been some talk that Luis Gilherme has actually been impressing Nuno. And also, as we saw, Nuno likes pace in those wing positions. And there's every chance that maybe he might look at Bowen as going as centre forward, using Gilherme on that right hand side to get some pace there. Or even if he wants to go for two direct wingers, Gilherme on the left and Somerville on the right hand side, and then put Bowen through the middle to kind of have it kind of a dynamic front three, with Paqueta dropping in between them and getting involved. I personally think he'll go for Marshall
over Wilson.
Yes, because I think Wilson's been available, which would suggest that he's been fit enough, to make the team. And as we've seen with the other managers, fit enough, Wilson has been picked. And Wilson turned the game against Nuno at Forest as well. Let's not forget that. Wilson had a very good game, and that was apparently not a fit Wilson. So I feel his preference maybe is with Marshall. And Marshall is utterly tenacious and will keep going. So I get the feeling if we're going to see someone get a start, I don't think it will get home. I think it will be Marshall at that kind of tip. And, he had a very good opportunity against Arsenal that he missed, and he said himself he should have scored, which is great. I love that attitude, that he looked at that chance, but no, I should be scoring now. So he's setting his own benchmarks, which is great to see. And I just think he's going to want to have, he's going to be three kind of fairly diminutive forwards in Somerville, Bowen, and Marshall. However, they will hopefully hassle and harry and allow us to kind of step up the pitch and place pressure on them, and force them maybe playing into a bit more of a direct kind of game, and us hopefully they're picking up on the second balls and keeping pressure on. So I'm going to personally, I think he might go for Marshall. I would probably be inclined to do that as well, because I think we need to start looking a bit more to the future and doing things with that in mind. And
do you think it's harder to do that especially as a manager, when you haven't won in the Premier League yet and you're in 19th position in the Premier League, where it's maybe a little bit more difficult to embed some of these younger players, especially as a striker, with Callum Marshall, doesn't really have much experience in the Premier League. And then the other option is someone like Callum Wilson, who's obviously got an abundance of experience in the Premier League. Does it make it a little bit more difficult as a manager to do that at this stage of the season?
No, actually, in my opinion, I think it's, if you think that player is good enough, regardless of the stage of the season, to then go for, say, Wilson, if you think Marshall's a better player and you're worried that, he doesn't have the experience, that's a cop-out. And also you're doing a disservice to that player, because you're ultimately then just going, I'm just going to take the path of least resistance and take the easy route. And we've seen the easy route and picking the obvious hasn't worked. Obviously, Wilson, the one game he has really made an impact was not at Forest, but we've picked the obvious starters or the obvious picks, and it hasn't worked out. Sometimes you've just got to go, I need to do the uncomfortable thing of maybe looking more at the youth players and maybe looking at these younger, more inexperienced players and putting more trust and more faith in them. he might put more faith in Lewis Gilherm. We don't know what happened if Lewis Gilherm comes on and scores a goal. What will that do for his confidence if he comes on and gets an assist? We've got these players. You've got to utilise them. Otherwise, there's no point. We might as well sell them all in January. If you're not going to use them now, when the squad is where it is, we might as well sell them. And also, Nuno's also got to be thinking, if I can give some of these lads a chance now, I might be able to say to the board, for instance, right, I know I said I wanted all of these players. I'm willing now to concede on 1 or 2 positions because these lads have impressed me. But the budget I would have had for those 2 players you would have given me, I still need to keep that so I can buy a better quality in this position and this position. And now these are my priorities. So for Nuno, I think it could be used as a good negotiation tactic, going further down the window, going, look, I've given these lads a chance as you've asked me to, and I'm conceding these lads are good quality and I want to use them. But as a result of that, and me doing what you've asked, I now need you, the quid pro quo. That budget was allocated to potentially their replacement or their improvement is now going on to the other couple of positions that I need, and I need that budget there and not disappearing into the ether.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think it's going to be a difficult call for Nuno, I think, because of the pressure that he's under to get 3 points. And as you say, if Nuno has been impressed by Marshall as a striker, then there's no reason why he shouldn't start him. I think it's a good point as well, the fact that Callum Wilson has been available for the last 2 games and hasn't found any minutes yet. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised as well, as you said, if Marshall was to start, or even if he maybe puts Paqueta a little bit further forwards and then brings Souček into the midfield or Potts into the midfield, as you mentioned as well. So, I think, as you said, it's all about just getting the 3 points and getting out of the London Stadium, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game. Obviously, we know what's happening with the boycotts as well. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, I think, on Monday night, especially because we're going to be the last game of the weekend. So we'll know how other results have gone as well around us, which sometimes adds a little bit more pressure, but hopefully not at this stage of the season. So with all things considered, Mike, what's your gut telling you? What's your score prediction for this one?
I'll go for an edgy 2-1 victory. I still feel weird saying that because it's me betting against that. Oh no, betting on us to win. But I think we've seen enough in Nuno to see that we will create some level of chances, and he's been brave with what he selected. So I'm gonna say that we're gonna have some level of positivity go in, and I'm gonna go with a 2-1 victory. But I do think Brentford are going to cause us some issues, and I do think they are going to test us.
Yeah, no, I was thinking 2-1 as well. I think in this sort of game, we normally sometimes do just edge the game. We just do get the 3 points whenever we're in these sort of situations. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we did win the game. It also wouldn't surprise me if we lost the game, to be honest.
No, exactly. That's why I say an edgy 2-1 win, because I can, as much as I can see us winning it, I can see it being a bit like the Palace game where, we get ourselves back in, we've got a head of steam, we're looking to do well, and then we just have a complete brain fart moment at the back, and then boom, it's all gone. just as quick and as fleeting as it looked like we might turn it around, like it's just gone.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully we do win, because as we mentioned, it would be an important 3 points and a platform for Nuno to work from and, as mentioned, get momentum from. So, yeah, let us know down below in the comments, what are your score predictions for the game? Do you see West Ham getting 3 points out of this tie against Brentford? And can we maybe use that as momentum to push on again for the rest of this season? But yeah, that's going to be all for today. Make sure to leave a like on the preview if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel for more content going forwards. And Mike, until the next one. Come on, you irons.